This is the last lecture for Chapter 10. The title of this lecture is American History, Unit 5, Lecture 3, The Emergence of Lincoln and Secession. So if you remember, John Green in the most recent crash course talked about both Abraham Lincoln and Stephen Douglas. In 1858, there was an Illinois state Senate race, so both men ran for a spot in the Senate. The Democratic candidate or runner was Stephen Douglas versus the Republican nominee for Senate, which was Abraham Lincoln. The key issue during this time was obviously slavery. Both Stephen and Abraham Lincoln opposed its growth in the West. However, Lincoln challenges Douglas to explain how popular sovereignty can work in light of the Dred Scott case. So if you remember, the Dred Scott case was that Supreme Court case which said that the Chief Justice Taney said that slavery was legal and could happen anywhere. However, Douglas argued that popular sovereignty needed to be the way that slave states would choose whether they were going to be slave states or free states. Lincoln inherently did not like slavery. However, he had to toe a thin line during these debates. Lincoln would go on to actually lose the Senate race to Douglas in 1858. However, over the series of him campaigning, they had public debates, and Lincoln got extremely popular during these debates. Douglas answers that question about how popular sovereignty will work, even though the Supreme Court case ruled in the Dred Scott case. Douglas answers with what he called or wrote up was the Freeport Doctrine. The Freeport Doctrine stated that slavery needs certain local laws to exist in order to be enforced. If people in that area or that state, for example, refuse to pass or enforce these laws, slavery cannot exist. Douglas will ultimately win the Senate election, but it angers Southern Democrats, splitting the party further. Lincoln gains national fame for his opposition to the growth of slavery. Harper's Ferry. So Harper's Ferry was a town in what is now West Virginia, Maryland, on the West Virginia border. An abolitionist named John Brown, who was the same John Brown that we talked about in Bleeding Kansas, he came back to the East Coast, and his goal was to raid an arsenal, which is basically a building that has firearms stored from the U.S. Army, and he was trying to get these firearms to slaves so that they could start a rebellion. And he was only successful in actually raiding the arsenal, and this happened in October 1859. And the raid actually fails, obviously, and Brown is hanged, and he is seen as a martyr to many people in the North, and the epitome of a Yankee and abolitionist. He is viewed that way in the South. Secession. So in 1860, Lincoln, still riding on his fame from losing the Senate seat in Illinois, he would be the Republican nominee for the Republican Party, and his view on slavery is to stop the spread of slavery. Douglas would run for president, and he was a Northern Democrat, and he favored popular sovereignty. John Breckinridge was a Southern Democrat, and he was pro-slavery, and he was a former vice president. And John Bell would run for the Constitutional Unionist Party, and he had no firm stand on slavery. So this was kind of the breakdown of the Electoral College and the popular vote in 1860. As you can see, Abraham Lincoln won the majority of the popular vote with 1.8 million, and thus he did in fact get enough electoral votes to win the presidency as well. So Lincoln's victory in the Southern response. President Lincoln wins the election, and no electoral votes are casted for him in the Southern states. South Carolina will be the first to secede from the Union. 6 other states will follow. So by the time he is inaugurated, there are 7 states that have formed their own country, called the Confederate States of America. Jefferson Davis would be elected president of the Confederacy, and Lincoln is now faced with an incredible challenge even before taking office.